GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christie's, and the wonderful Inaya Falarian Man on your TV, radio and online. Huge show today. We're going to try to do our best to swerve Partygate as much as possible for you. We've got the PM in India, find out why the BBC have cancelled JK Rowling, and we've got a fraud special as well.
Yes, make sure you get in touch with your views as usual, gbviews at gbnews.uk. We'll be getting to those throughout the show, but first it's the latest news.
Good morning. It's coming up to 1 minute past 10. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. A senior Conservative MP has said there's an absence of discipline, focus and leadership in Number 10. Tobias Ellwood made the comments this morning after MPs ordered an investigation into whether the Prime Minister misled Parliament over parties at Downing Street. The probe by the Privileges Committee will begin once police have completed their investigation into COVID rule breaches. Shadow Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, Peter Kyle, told GB News the Partygate scandals revealed Boris Johnson's true self.
Lost his authority because he couldn't even get his own MPs to support him yesterday. The police have fined him. He has a criminal sanction against him. What this whole Partygate debacle has exposed is Boris Johnson's character flaws. He is reckless, he's untrustworthy, and he lies, and he is incompetent.
Meanwhile, 4,000 miles away, Boris Johnson continues his two-day tour of India to strengthen ties with the country. He's currently in New Delhi for talks with his Indian counterpart, Narendra Modi. Mr Johnson said the two leaders had told negotiators working on a post-Brexit trade deal to get it done by Diwali in October.
So today, we've agreed a new and expanded defence and security partnership, a decades-long commitment that will not only forge tighter bonds between us, but support your goal, Narendra, of Make in India. We've agreed to work together to meet new threats across land, sea, air, space and cyber.
A German national linked to the disappearance of Madeleine McCann has been identified as a formal suspect by Portuguese authorities. Officers haven't named the individual. In 2020, German police said they were investigating a man known as Christian B. in connection with the disappearance of the 3-year-old in Praia da Luz in May 2007. The mayor of Mariupol has appealed for a full evacuation of the besieged Ukrainian city. It's after Russia's President Vladimir Putin claimed it's now controlled by his forces. Mayor Vadim Boychenko says Putin's destroyed around 90% of the port city and that 100,000 people are still waiting for evacuation. Satellite images of Mariupol appear to show mass graves. Russia has yet to respond to the claims.
There are still 100,000 people in this city who, for the second day in a row, are waiting for evacuation. And they give us just such a tiny number of buses. Like it was yesterday, they said there would be 90 buses, but only 7 arrived.
The World Bank estimates the war in Ukraine has caused $60 billion worth of damage to buildings. David Malpass, the organisation's president, made the comments during a conference in the US. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky also spoke at the conference. He said his country needs $7 billion a month to make up for economic losses.
The funds from the war tax should be used to help Ukraine, to rebuild everything that Russia has destroyed in the war. And if this tax is applied to other aggressors, the funds should be directed to the victims of the war. Every country in the world needs to prepare now for the possible complete severance of relations with Russia. No one should depend on the political whims of the leaders of that country.
To France now, where Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen are out on their last day of campaigning ahead of the presidential vote on Sunday. Let's speak to our reporter Paul Hawkins, who's in Paris for us. Paul, what's the latest in this presidential race?
The latest is that Macron has a 10-point lead over Le Pen, but as we've seen with Trump and with Brexit in the past, the polls can get it wrong. And what will be crucial are the votes of those that went to Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the far-left candidate, in the first round. He polled 22% of the vote. That's just 1 point behind Marine Le Pen. Whether his voters abstain or spoil their ballot or indeed don't even bother to go to the polls, that will be crucial. Macron needs their votes to prop up his support. The big campaign issues are of course, the cost of living. But as you say, it is the last day of campaigning. The message from Macron will be one of continuity. The one from Le Pen will be change.
Paul, thank you, and enjoy that glorious Paris sunshine. Now, UK retail sales dropped last month as the rising cost of living starts to hit consumer spending. According to the Office for National Statistics, they fell by an unexpected 1.4% in March. Online sales bore the brunt as people cut down on unnecessary purchases, dropping 7.9%. Fuel sales also fell as people reduced their non-essential travel amid soaring petrol and diesel prices. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now, though, it's back to Patrick and Anaya with To The Point.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Anaya Iman, and Patrick Christie's on your TV, radio and online. We've got a great show lined up to kickstart your day, so here's what's on the menu.
Right, well, the Prime Minister is in India in hopes of unlocking Britain's potential, global Britain and all that, as the UK and India sign a new defence cooperation agreement and will look to complete a free trade deal by the end of the year.
Exciting. Well, this comes as the Prime Minister faces mounting problems at home after MPs ordered a third investigation into whether or not Johnson misled Parliament over the Partygate affair. Will Boris Johnson survive?
Probably. Right. Russian President Vladimir Putin claims the port city of Mariupol has fallen. Now, in the biggest battle of the war so far, despite hundreds of Ukrainians still holding out inside a giant steel plant.
Yes, we have all that coming up and much more across the programme, so make sure you get in touch with your views, as usual, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Yes. Right, while all of this Partygate drama carries on back home, I mean, when will it end? But anyway, Boris Johnson is in India, where he's aiming to boost trade, energy and security ties to deliver a more secure and prosperous future.
Yes, to do this, the Prime Minister has said he wants to accelerate a post-Brexit free trade deal, give out more visas for India workers, and this morning he announced an increased focus on defence and security in the Indo-Pacific as well. We're here to discuss.
So today we've agreed a new and expanded defence and security partnership, a decades-long commitment that will not only forge tighter bonds between us, but support your goal, Narendra, of Make in India. The UK is creating an India-specific open general export licence, reducing bureaucracy and slashing delivery times for defence procurement. We've agreed to work together to meet new threats across land, sea, air, space and cyber.
Yes, and here to discuss this more is Idrani Bakchi, CEO of Ananta Espan Centre, a non-for-profit organisation aiming to lead an open discussion on issues facing Indian society. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. And firstly, is this the post-Brexit vision that the world hoped for, that now that Britain has left the European Union, engaging with non-EU partners, former Commonwealth and Commonwealth countries and so on?
Hi, thank you for having me. And yes, it is actually. I think Brexit was an opening for the India-UK relationship. And I think we are seeing the pieces coming together slowly, certainly with the Prime Minister's visit, which is now, he's almost like third time lucky, because this is his third attempt at a visit to India.
OK, now, what's the personal relationship like, as far as we're aware, between Modi and Boris Johnson? One thing that Boris Johnson does seem to do quite well is get on with other world leaders.
I think Modi does more or less the same thing. He sort of gets on pretty well with other global leaders. And I think they've met several times now. I think they do have a pretty good relationship, like a personal relationship. And I think that works in the current situation.
OK, so what can we expect from a new trade deal with the UK and India? What kind of areas do you reckon it'll cover?
So I reckon we see tariff drops in a lot of areas. Certainly some of the areas that the UK wanted, which was like Scotch whisky, etc., which is, I think we will reduce tariffs on such areas. India, I think, wants more in terms of tech migration or tech mobility of tech professionals. I'm not sure where the UK is on that. I'd be surprised if it is in the first deal. It may come rather sort of down the road. The Prime Minister, the UK Prime Minister, talked about a reduced bureaucracy and reduced delivery times for defence items. I think that would be very welcome in India. And so what we are actually looking for is, there is a kind of a complementarity between the two sides in terms of services versus goods. And that services was a problem with the UK earlier. We have to see how much they are open to services agreement with India in the coming FTA.
Yeah, and perhaps on a more sensitive issue, there is a large ethnic minority population in the UK of Indian heritage, but also of Pakistani heritage. And we know that under the previous Labour leadership, which is the opposition party in the UK, Jeremy Corbyn, there was tensions around discussions about Kashmir, the Kashmir issue, and whether or not it was right for Britain to get closer to India under Modi. I mean, do you worry about possible other tensions and political sensitivities potentially getting in the way of that relationship between the UK and India?
So the biggest sensitivity that India has with the UK on this front is less the Pakistani, much more what India sees as British tolerance for Islamist groups, which are either Pakistani in origin, some are Bangladeshi in origin, and that's a problem. Also, problems with what we call the Khalistanis, that is Sikh extremists. These are groups that find space both in the UK and in Canada, and that is a sensitive political issue for India. So we have to see how this is managed by the UK government, whichever UK government it is, whether it's the Tories or the Labour. And in previous years, as you rightly said, there have been sensitivities about statements in Parliament, about protests outside the Indian High Commission. So some of those, I think, will be raised, yes.
Good stuff. Thank you very much. Indrani Bagchi there, CEO of Ananta Aspen Centre. Thank you for whizzing us through the potential trade deal, anyway, that Boris Johnson is about to strike up, allegedly with India. So, yes, it'll be interesting to see. He's going out there.
Yeah, no,
getting our trade deals?
Yeah, I do think it's very interesting. Even the issue that she mentioned about maybe easier mobility for tech professionals from India to come to the UK. And I do think that this is an important discussion in relation to wider discussions about immigration, because I think some people I've seen very recently express that that EU immigration has gone down as a result of us leaving the European Union, but non-EU immigration has actually gone up. And I hope that as long as it's managed rightfully and properly and transparently, that this shouldn't be an issue, as long as it's people that want to contribute, want to better their lives and the lives of people in the UK.
Well, it's one of the reasons as well why people were saying, oh, you know, these racist little Englanders who voted for Brexit. Well, we're going to, as a result of that, probably have more ethnic minorities in the country. So, I mean, you know, it doesn't really make much sense to me in that regard. But just moving away from that now, obviously the Prime Minister's trip to India comes after he suffered a bit of a blow yesterday in the House of Commons. Apparently, the Labour side was so pleased. Keir Starmer went into the bar afterwards, apparently bought a massive round of drinks for everyone, so he's clearly very, very chuffed. Of course, they have as yet achieved the square root of NAF4, but there we go. MPs voted to open a formal inquiry into whether the Prime Minister knowingly misled Parliament. I'm sick of this, but I've told that I'll get sacked if we don't talk about it.
Well, the inquiry from the Commons Privileges Committee will investigate whether the Prime Minister misled Parliament over the occurrence of illegal parties in Downing Street. The Prime Minister has denied those illegal gatherings ever took place.
Yes, but just last week, the PM and his wife were fined for breaking COVID laws by attending a birthday event in Downing Street. Now, the question for the inquiry to answer, right, is whether or not Boris Johnson knowingly misled the House of Commons. It's almost thought police territory, this, actually, because if he has, then under government guidelines, he'd be expected to resign. But realistically, it's going to be very difficult to prove what's going on and what was going on in Boris Johnson's head. It would need some hard evidence, like an email or something, saying, let's go and have a massive party.
Well, joining us now to discuss this is political commentator Dr. John Coulter. Thank you for joining us. I mean, there was discussion earlier in the week that Prime Minister Boris Johnson was potentially going to drop this trip that he's now done to India in order to face further discussions over Partygate. Is there an argument that actually the continuing to drag on this issue could actually potentially compromise Britain's strategic and economic and political relationships abroad because we're so focused on this?
Well, good morning, folks. The reality is it's time to park Partygate. And we've got to really see what this vote in the House of Commons is. It's an election stunt by the opposition parties to try and convert the May the 5th elections into a referendum on Boris Johnson's premiership. So let's get a bit of a reality check here. What's happening in the globe? Putin is talking about his Satan II missiles. What is happening in the United States? They're sending millions of dollars of aid to Ukraine. And what are we talking about here in the British Parliament? A cake.
Absolutely.
Come on, folks, let's get a bit of reality. I want to introduce something here. There's an old saying, Nero fiddled while Rome burned. The one I want to introduce is Parliament has fiddled while Ukraine has burned. We need to seriously get on board as to what is happening there.
No, a lot of people would agree with you, but many people would disagree and say, actually, political scrutiny and oversight does not get suspended because there are international conflicts going on, that actually the process to hold the Prime Minister accountable should continue in spite of global challenges and affairs.
This is a very valid point that you make. But the counter-argument is this is no ordinary conflict out in Ukraine. This is the worst conflict Europe has seen since the Second World War. People are being slaughtered. There's talk of genocide, mass murder, that aspect of things. What Boris Johnson needs to do in India at the present minute is he has to be congratulated for any deal that he's got for a post-Brexit society and economy. But what he also needs to do is to tell India to, shall we say, stop the softly approach with the Russians. He needs to go around and be like Macron of France. In other words, building up an anti-Russian coalition politically. I think that that's what he needs to do, rather than worry about whether he ate cake or didn't eat cake. I think we've got to get away from this Partygate. Yes, I fully appreciate politicians have to be held accountable, and they probably will be held accountable on May the 5th. But this is too serious a crisis that we have to deal with here. We've got to get Boris Johnson home and get those major arms out to Ukraine.
OK, I hear loud and clear what you're saying. I actually think there's something quite disingenuous about what the Labour Party are doing, and I think when they're wheeling out names of people who lost loved ones and they weren't able to hold their hands, I actually think that's quite shameful, because I'm not sure Keir Starmer really cares about Partygate. I don't think he really cares about cake. I think he sees that the only way he would ever stand any chance of getting into Downing Street is if he can depose Boris Johnson. I mean, the idea of Keir Starmer turning up to India and getting a trade deal, I mean, Modi would probably think he was the chauffeur, for goodness sake. He wouldn't have a clue who he was. But, I mean, realistically, though, do you think that Labour actually care about Partygate? Do they just want Boris out and this is the way to do it?
Labour has been faced with an internal civil war really ever since Tony Blair left the premiership. You need only look at the war in Labour whenever Corbyn was in charge. So they've got to deflect away from whether they're a hard left party, a centre left party, a social democratic party. They've got to deflect attention from that. And that's why they're focusing on Boris Johnson. They see him as the ticket into Downing Street. Not that they have anything to offer the people of the United Kingdom, but they just want to present themselves, we're not Boris. And that's the ticket that they're going on. It's to cover up the civil war in Labour.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you, political commentator.
You can come back, John.
John Coulter, thank you for sharing your thoughts on Partygate. I mean, I have to disagree with both of you. I mean, you have principled MPs, backbenchers like Steve Baker and Mark Harper, who have been consistent and principled on the lockdown, on many other issues. You have to really ask what's their incentive for them to effectively call for Boris Johnson to resign. And right now, we have the French elections going on. So even the Ukraine crisis is going on whilst French people are deciding their own political leader. It's not unusual for these kinds of questions to be asked whilst there are other problems going on in the world. And so I'm sympathetic to both sides, but I'm not sure I buy the argument that international issues means that we shouldn't hold our own politicians to account.
I absolutely get what you mean. I think for me it's pretty simple. I just don't really care about Partygate. I just don't really care about the cake.
Do you care about holding politicians to account?
Yeah, I just don't think he did anything wrong. I mean, I ate cake during the lockdown. I ate lots of cake, of cake, and I mean seriously, I get that people might disagree with me here, and I know I feel huge amounts of sympathy for people who didn't see their loved ones in hospital and this, that, and the other. But I do think there is a difference between that and just before you walk into a meeting on your birthday, someone handing you a cake.
Yeah, I do agree with that, and I do think it does smack of something quite disingenuous. The way that it's being dragged out.
They're wheeling out these names. These poor people are being used. I can't remember the guy's name, John something or whatever he was called. That Keir Starmer was wheeling out. I think it's a bit sickening, this. This thing of he couldn't hold his mother's hand in the night, all of this stuff. And I think, hang on a minute, I don't think Keir really cares about that. I think
the lockdown was the real crime.
Yeah, and also someone's just got in the inbox. Let's do some views. GBViews, GBnews.uk. Maybe we should have an inquiry as to whether or not Sage misled the government. That's I can't remember the name on this one, but that's an interesting one there. We might not care much about Partygate, but here we go. Here's an Inaya fan. We might not care about Partygate that much, but our politicians need to be held accountable. The sole focus on the Ukraine war by the guest John from Northern Ireland, our last commentator, instead of accountability, makes it seem like the war was engineered to save Boris's job. I think that's a bit extreme, Alex, but yes, I get what you mean. So they're with you on this.
Yeah, I just think how long can we have a moral vacuum operating at the heart of government? And I'm not saying that is what Boris Johnson is operating as, but at least from the public's perspective, many people do wonder where the principle is.
Yeah. No, I get that. I do get that. But look, let us know what you think. GBViews at GBnews.uk. I mean, I know I said that we're going to try and swerve Partygate as much as possible, so I just...
how's that working for us?
I just decided to treat it with utter disdain. Anyway, after the break, we look ahead to the French presidential elections taking place this weekend and what the results could mean for Britain. Stay tuned.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning all, it's 10:25. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys, and Inaya Falarin-Iman on GB News, live as ever on your TV, online and radio this Friday.
Yes, the two candidates for the French presidency, Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen, went head-to-head in their only televised debate ahead of the final vote this Sunday. Watched by an audience of around 15.6 million people, the two clashed on issues of the cost of living, climate change, Russia, immigration, and of course Le Pen's controversial plan to ban women wearing headscarves.
Yes, indeed. But who won the debate and who is likely to win on Sunday? Joining us to explain more is David Chazan, a journalist based in Paris who is outside a polling station for us. Thank you very, very much for joining us. So, who won the debate?
Well, it depends who you speak to. Obviously, supporters of both candidates claim that their candidate won, but the opinion polls would indicate that roughly 6 out of 10 French people found Emmanuel Macron, the incumbent president, more credible and more convincing. He really laid into Marine Le Pen over loans that she took from Russia. He said, how can you conduct an independent foreign policy when you talk to Russia, you're talking to your banker? And he was saying that the banks that gave her those loans are closely linked to the Kremlin. At the beginning of the election campaign, Marine Le Pen had to withdraw an election pamphlet that had a big picture of her with Vladimir Putin. So she has long been one of his supporters. That's something she's vulnerable on. But on the other hand, she managed to score a few points against Emmanuel Macron when it came to the cost of living. She said he's the president of the rich, of business, but she is the candidate that's got the people's interests at heart. And that's really been one of the main themes of her campaign.
I mean, yeah, the consensus does seem to be that Macron edged it. But in terms of when you look at Marine Le Pen's performance from last time, and she's some people have argued that she's improved quite significantly. But what has been quite striking, though, is that that particular debate seemed to focus more on Marine Le Pen and her track record rather than the incumbent president, Macron, and his track record. And that seems to have been quite effective on Macron's part to actually divert the attention on Marine Le Pen rather than actually the fact that he's been in office and what he's done over the last few years.
Absolutely. It was a bit of a role reversal there because Macron appeared as the challenger and he put Marine Le Pen on the defensive, and he was very aggressive in the way he handled the debate. But why does he do that? It's because Marine Le Pen has spent the last few years trying to moderate her party's image, to be able to reach out to more voters who in previous years wouldn't have gone anywhere near the far right. And she has largely succeeded. I mean, if you look at her performance over the years, since she took over the party's leadership from her father, Jean-Marie Le Pen, she has done better steadily in each election that she's contested. And now, for the second time, she's through to the second final round of the French election, and a party that was once seen as a fringe far-right group is now part of normal political discourse. So what Emmanuel Macron is trying to do is tell people, look, maybe she sounds better, maybe you're seeing a lot of pictures of her with her cats and she looks like a nice lady, but actually this is the same old far right that you've always known. And so this process of detoxifying her party, he is trying to counter that and retoxify it.
Yeah.
Just quickly, David, sorry, because we're a bit pressed for time now. It's been a fantastic summary of events. Just very quickly, if you can, what would Marine Le Pen mean for Britain in terms of our relationship? Would we be closer to France or not, do you think?
I interviewed Marine Le Pen before the election, and she's a big admirer of both Brexit and Boris Johnson. She said Boris Johnson isn't a traditional conservative. He's a populist, in her words, in the positive sense of the term. She wants the European Union to be a looser association of nation states, and she wants to work more closely with Britain.
Good stuff. Thank you so much, David. Really great stuff. That no doubt I'll be speaking to you again very, very soon. David Chazan there, a journalist based in Paris.
Yeah. I think she's going to really struggle to win. It's going to be closer than perhaps before, but it's going to be very difficult. And according to a lot of the polls, she's failed to unite the right. The overwhelming majority of people on the harder right of the political spectrum in France are voting for her. But the centre-right people have not embraced Marine Le Pen, and I think that might have been the difficulty to overcome. One really interesting point, though, a lot of the issues in the UK are split from a generational perspective, but one of the things that's been very striking is actually 25 to 39-year-olds in France, 60%, according to the polls, are voting for Marine Le Pen.
Really?
And so I think it really challenges this idea that the youth are innately embracing of progressivism. Actually, the youth in France have a particular interest in right-wing politics. So I think that's something
that's
to pay
actually really
attention
fascinating.
to.
That's really fascinating, actually. And I suppose if she can cling on, give it another 10 years.
Youthquake.
Youthquake. Anyway, right, OK. Thank you very much, everybody who's been getting in touch. Yeah, lots of you obviously talking to us about... Well, it's funny, isn't it? I did open the show by saying we're going to swerve Partygate. We did a chat saying that... Or chat about it. Now, all of you are getting in touch about Partygate, so it looks like we can't avoid it, unfortunately. But yes, basically people saying, well, there's a mixed bag, actually. The votes are not daft. And Boris Johnson, the vendetta, it's called the vendetta against Boris Johnson has been led by the media.
Question for you. I mean, is your defence of Boris in relation to Partygate to do with something that, for example, that there's not a replacement for Boris, that you're worried that you know, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know? And if there was an alternative candidate waiting in the wings that, you know, was populist, pro-Brexit, pro-free speech, wanted to do with immigration, then you would happily ditch Boris?
No, my defence of Boris Johnson is I don't really think he's done anything wrong.
OK.
That's fundamentally it. I mean, yeah, look, hey, hang on a minute, don't get me wrong. If I thought there was, you know, a load of people in the Tory party queuing up, yeah, maybe I would be more inclined to it. Maybe, I know that you don't buy this argument, but at all, and I can appreciate why. You know, if there wasn't a war in Ukraine, maybe I'd be more inclined to do it. But to be honest with you, look, unless something really catastrophic comes out, from what I've seen so far, I don't think a man should lose his job over a bit of cake. But anyway, people may disagree with me. GBViews at gbnews.uk. But after the break, did you know Julian Assange started a political party in Australia called the WikiLeaks Party? There you go. Well, we'll ask one of its candidates about Assange and why he supported him after these headlines.
Good morning, it's 10:33. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. A senior Conservative MP has said there's an absence of discipline, focus and leadership in Number 10. Tobias Ellwood made the comments this morning after MPs ordered an investigation into whether the Prime Minister misled Parliament over Partygate. Shadow Secretary of State for Northern Ireland Peter Kyle told GB News the Partygate scandals revealed Boris Johnson's true self.
Lost his authority because he couldn't even get his own MPs to support him yesterday. The police have fined him. He has a criminal sanction against him. What this whole Partygate debacle has exposed is Boris Johnson's character flaws. He is reckless, he's untrustworthy, and he lies, and he is incompetent.
Meanwhile, 4,000 miles away, Boris Johnson continues his two-day tour of India to strengthen ties with the country. Speaking this morning, he confirmed the two nations have signed a new defence partnership. He made the announcement in New Delhi during a conference with his Indian counterpart, Narendra Modi. A German national linked to the disappearance of Madeleine McCann has been identified as a formal suspect by Portuguese authorities. Officers haven't named the individual. In 2020, German police said they were investigating a man known as Christian B. in connection with the disappearance of the 3-year-old in Praia da Luz in May 2007. The mayor of Mariupol has appealed for a full evacuation of the besieged Ukrainian city. It's after Russia's President Vladimir Putin claimed the city's now controlled by his forces. Mayor Vadim Boychenko says Putin's destroyed about 90% of Mariupol and that 100,000 people are still waiting for evacuation. Satellite images of the city appear to show mass graves. Russia has yet to respond to the claims. TV online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. More at the top of the hour. It's back to Patrick and Inaya with To The Point in just a moment.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's 10:37. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Anaya Falarin-Iman and Patrick Christys. We're live on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Yes, we are indeed. Now, this is just in. The Metropolitan Police's War Crimes team has received dozens of referrals relating to alleged war crimes in Ukraine and is appealing for anyone with direct evidence to come forward.
Yes, today is day 58 of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and President Vladimir Putin has claimed victory over the besieged city of Mariupol, saying the civilians have been liberated.
Well, there you go. I mean, that's ridiculous, isn't it? But anyway, meanwhile, civilians across the country actually report being actively targeted, raped and killed by Russian soldiers. Well, Ewan Grant, a former law enforcement intelligence analyst for ex-Soviet states, is very much in the studio with us today. Ewan, how are you?
Good to see you.
Good. Right. Well, what do you make of these latest allegations, basically? I mean, it sounds as though, you know, the unrelenting war crimes are continuing.
Yes, they are. They may slightly die down as they consolidate after de facto control of Mariupol, but of course they are advancing further north. It's not going to change. It might reduce, but the evidence, I mean, there's a strong case. You've got to look hard. There will have been abuses, and they have been on a large scale, not universal.
What should happen next, Ewan? Because we are continuing to give weaponry and support to Ukraine. But some critics are saying, this is not my position necessarily, but some critics are saying that our continuation of giving weapons is actually just extending the war longer, because ultimately Russia is flattening cities like Mariupol and places like Mariupol, which is just extending the conflict further. I mean, what is the alternative? Do you continue to give weapons, or how do we negotiate for a peace, if it's even possible, to support Ukrainians to do that? What are the options here? Because now when you're seeing cities being turned to rubble, you really wonder how long this war is going to continue.
Well, the Times had a very sobering warning this morning that fairly intensive conflict could go on for months to the end of the year. The small print was a bit more optimistic, that Russia's limited in what it will actually likely achieve, and I share that cautious optimism. They can't make huge advances, though there's still a risk. But what are the alternatives? You don't negotiate with one hand tied behind your back. And many of those, not all, many of those who are calling for negotiations are really calling for the acceptance of Russian terms, and we don't know what those will be now. We know what they were. We don't know what they'll be now.
How likely do you think it is that Putin will continue to try to take all of Ukraine? Do you think he might stop and draw a line somewhere?
Yes.
He can claim an element of victory, can't he?
I think, I thought he would try and go to the Dnieper River. To a certain extent, he's already there in one isolated spot at Kherson, which means he can threaten the rest of the Black Sea coast without actually taking it. Remember, they've got a de facto blockade of Odessa and the trade, which is why we're suffering losses of sunflower oil and so on. We can live with that. Ukraine's paying a much higher price. No, I think he won't go much further than the Donbass territories as a whole, and he might try and get to the very junction of the river where the big river bends east, where he's got a bit of it, and he can always turn the tap on and off.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, I worry now. I mean, how does Putin and Russia, what's their exit strategy? You know, how do they come out of this now, having completely alienated themselves from the world, flattened so many parts of Ukraine, effectively creating a very binary opposition between an ally, a bordering country, to them? I mean, how do they come...
enemy.
Exactly. How do they come back from this in terms of the international community?
Yeah, well, I think an awful lot of senior people in Russia are asking that question as well, but they can't say it out loud, can't they? Because they've got their career and family prospects to think of. He must be hoping, I think, for China, India. Of course, the Prime Minister's there. We'll hear what he's got to say, and of course there will be things not said behind the scenes. Maybe India can mediate. I think Putin will be playing for time, and again it comes down to, will the European countries hold out? Will Germany come in?
Yeah, just quickly, I mean, now America is having to negotiate with Saudi Arabia and Venezuela in terms of replacing oil. We still don't know what, as you mentioned, India and China are going to do. It really does show a new multipolar reality. It's not, America can't just unilaterally decide things anymore. It has to negotiate and discuss with smaller, often developing countries now. And that really does signal, at least to me, a different era that we're entering into.
Indeed it is, and that's what, notice how almost irrelevant the UN has been, because the Security Council, veto or not, doesn't reflect modern reality.
No. Ewan, look, thank you very much. Thank you for coming into the studio for us there. Ewan Grant, of course, intelligence and security expert. Right, now, under the government's new immigration policy, policy, yes, a former RAF site near York will become Britain's first asylum processing reception centre.
Yes, hundreds of single male asylum seekers could be placed at the former RAF base within the village of Linton-on-Ouse for up to 180 days at a time, while their claims for UK asylum are being considered.
Yes, right. Those that are rejected for asylum will be sent more than 4,000 miles away on a one-way ticket to Rwanda. Anna Riley has the story.
A former RAF base in the sleepy North Yorkshire village of Linton-on-Ouse is set to be the first UK asylum reception centre under new Home Office plans to tackle illegal immigration. The disused 680-acre facility will house up to 1,500 single male asylum seekers who could stay on the site for up to 6 months while their claims are processed, with access to Linton-on-Ouse and the wider area until 10 p.m. each evening. Residents weren't consulted on the plans, and many gathered at a parish council meeting on Thursday evening to voice their concerns.
Well, I'm shocked and surprised. I think people are angry and upset simply because of not being informed, because it's come so totally out of the blue.
I mean, they've got to go somewhere, but a village as small as this, it's crazy.
Currently, we live in a very tight-knit community. Everybody knows everybody. Our children feel safe to roam around. They can go to the park on their own, and that will change, and that makes us feel unsafe.
Fundamentally, it's a good idea. I think we should be supporting people that are coming from difficult situations.
But when you've suddenly got 1,500 adult males from a completely different culture being able to integrate in the village, wander around uncontrolled, I think it's dangerous.
The sharp increase in illegal boat crossings to Dover means about 37,000 destitute migrants are currently being accommodated in hotels, costing the taxpayer £4.7 million a day. Kevin Hollinrake, local MP for Thirsk and Malton, can see how housing migrants at the disused RAF Linton-on-Ouse site will save money and create up to 300 local jobs. But Kevin's opposing the plans as he doesn't believe the area has sufficient amenities to house hundreds.
I just don't think it's the right location. As I said, from the Home Office advice, you'd expect this to be in a major conurbation, and then the residents there, who are free to come and go, can go out and access leisure facilities or the park or whatever else it is, doctors and dental surgeries, that kind of thing. Although I understand those things will be provided on the sites, but it's bound to be easier to do things to access certain services in a large town or a city rather than a very small village, potentially up to 1,500 people. And that's bigger than the village. That's the camp itself would be bigger than the village at that point in time. So I just don't think it's the right location.
In response to concerns raised, a Home Office spokesman said the reception centre will contribute towards ending the costly use of hotels and help those most in need while returning those without a genuine right to remain in the UK. If the plans go ahead without opposition, the 1,200 residents living in this village could see the first migrants coming to this new purpose-built asylum reception centre within the coming weeks. Anna Riley, GB News, Linton-on-Ouse.
Yes, Anna, thank you very much for that report. And it's an interesting one, really, I think. And this has been a hugely controversial topic, the Rwanda deal, hasn't it? Earlier on in the week, I revealed as well that the state of the current asylum seeker hotels in this country, and they're going to be using up various private housing stock, I should say, in areas, making it harder for people, essentially, to get on the ladder. I mean, the Rwanda thing for me just seems like it's worth a go. It's worth a try, you know. But I don't know. Do you feel different?
Yeah.
You were quite against it last week, I think, weren't you?
Yeah, no, I'm still against it. But what I would say is that I think that the criticism coming from the opposition has been lacklustre, to say the least. And I think that their criticism hasn't been a reason not to try it. I think that basically just criticising any attempt to control immigration is just making policies like this more likely, as they're not being properly scrutinised, they're just being dismissed outright. And I think that, you know, it's a policy to try and deal with the problem, but I'm not sure that it's actually going to work. And I'm not sure that on a principled level we should be contracting out our immigration policy to developing countries. But that is
fair enough.
And just on the point about the housing, I do think that is a massive problem. That was £6 million a day, I think it is, that we're spending. But are these not political problems? You know, are these not problems of the failure of successive governments to build more housing?
Well, this is it.
Invest in public services. You know, we can't blame people crossing the channel, at least in my view, for what is a political failing.
It's like it is. Yeah, I don't think you blame people coming across the channel necessarily. I think it's exposed, hasn't it? We always knew that we had low-level housing stock, that we weren't building enough homes. We knew that we weren't necessarily doing that well. We were very stretched when it came to a lot of our public services, and then, you know, this has been added to it now, and it's exposed it for what it is. But again, I suppose, you know, all the more reason to have got to grips with this sooner and tried to have sorted something out, and maybe, dare I say, it had been a bit stronger with our borders sooner, so it wouldn't have exposed it. It's a bit like my bank account. You know, I spend everything, and then when I need a new boiler, I can't afford it.
Yeah, you know, if it works, you know, that'll be interesting. And
I hope the boiler works, otherwise I'm skin and cold. But anyway...
Well, remains to be seen.
Well, anyway, now to today's controversy. A transgender author is facing backlash over her twisted horror novel, which depicts J.K. Rowling's violent death at the hands of trans activists.
J.K. Rowling has faced abuse in the past for her views on the trans debate, being accused by a minority of being transphobic over her claims that biological sex is real and immutable and cannot be changed. Despite being one of the UK's most successful authors, J.K. Rowling has also been excluded from a BBC reading list of books celebrating the Queen's 70-year reign. A judge for a reading list of books decided Harry Potter was a children's book and would not be included, but many have suggested she wouldn't be included because of her controversial views.
Yes. Well, joining us now is Alka Sigal-Cuthbert, Head of Education at Don't Divide Us, who are taking a stand against the divisive obsession with racial identity, amongst other things, as well. Welcome to the programme. Great to have you on the show. I mean, apart from the fact that this book is quite offensive in the sense that it's killing off J.K. Rowling, it's also just not a very good book from what I can gather. I've got some quotes of it here and it just seems like tosh. But has this got the potential to incite violence against J.K. Rowling?
Sorry, which book is this? Are you talking about the reading?
Sorry, there's a book. I know you're on only to talk about the BBC. Sorry, but there's a trans author who's killed off J.K. Rowling, essentially in a book in a fire, right. I believe. But because
can
she's
a book incite violence?
Sorry.
Okay. Generally, I mean, I'm generally kind of in agreement with the theories that say media effects theory and ideas that flow from that, which is like what you're saying. People read something or they see something and then they immediately go out and kind of act upon it in an isolated context with nothing else is considered. I think are pretty silly. I think they show a daft idea of how humans behave. But that says nothing about the quality or the motivation or the book itself. That's a comment on, I don't think people are that simplistic. So I don't think a book in and of itself is going to, lead somebody to go and commit violence. I think that's an argument that's used by people, that has been used throughout history to censor things, basically.
I guess some people's argument is that it reveals the fantasies of some people and their attitude towards J.K. Rowling. But I take the point about that it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to lead to real-world violence. But just moving on to Rowling being banned from the BBC, or at least the BBC reading list, to be more specific. I mean, what do you make of that? Is it just the fact of that she didn't make the cut, or do you think it is revealing their sensitivities around this issue, and actually, to some extent, a political decision to exclude her, potentially because of her views.
Yeah, no, I think this reading list is really interesting, actually. I mean, any selection is going to cause, create a bit of a furore. People will be upset by what's been included and others by what's not been included. But I think the justification that's been given from the people that have made the selections is really, really pathetic. This idea that they said that they've removed her to make space for a less well-known author, which seems really kind of like odd. Why her? There are lots of other, Margaret Atwood's there are loads of other very well-known authors. So that seems like a very, very shabby excuse for basically them having, what you're relating to your other question earlier, it might not make somebody do something, but the fact that people think it's okay to vent and express such, hatred against somebody on the pure basis that you have a disagreement with them, that you don't see something the same way, says a lot about that person and a lot about the kind of cultural moment that we're in. And I think this reading list is also very similar. I mean, for me, I just think it's such a shame. There's a J.K. Rowling question, but I think there's an even kind of wider question that is raised by this reading list, which is, it's meant to be a celebration, but it's not. You're not clear exactly what it's celebrating. It's meant to be about literature, but you're not really have any sense of what literary criteria is being used. It essentially seems like the personal preferences.
Yeah, just
sorry, I'm going on, Anna. You want to ask me?
No, it's very interesting. Just finally on that point that you actually raised, I really worry about the way that J.K. Rowling, as you've kind of alluded to, has been turned into this kind of boogeyman figure to which almost anything is allowed to be done towards her or expressed towards her.
To a house.
Yeah, she's almost been unpersoned and been turned into a caricature, which is almost dehumanising in a way. What do you think, Hauke?
No, I think that's very indicative of the way the way that the politicisation of culture is working and identity politics is working, in that it presents itself as being kind of very morally virtuous and concerned about being kind and concerned about improving society and improving the way we behave with each other. But actually, anyone that disagrees, it's like no holds barred. You can be as cruel and as vicious and as, dismissive and contemptuous in a way that's totally out of proportion to what the disagreement might be about. So it does show that it shows the cruelty of this cultural authoritarianism.
Absolutely. Alka, thank you very much. Alka Segal-Cuthbert, the Head of Education at Don't Divide Us. Fantastic stuff, that. I think, she's a deep thinker, you can tell.
Indeed. Well,
probably where you going with her.
Well, maybe that's true.
Yeah, right, keep all your thoughts coming into us on email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We will be back with more on today's top stories and plenty of your views after this very short break.
Hello there, welcome to your weather update from the Met Office. I'm Claire Nazir. Here are your headlines through the rest of today. Still that nagging easterly wind, a few showers lurking around. Brightest skies will be towards the north. We're stuck between high pressure across Iceland and low pressure lurking across Iberia as well as France. A squeeze on the isobars, meaning we're seeing that easterly wind come in over a cool sea, hence the reason why it's going to feel cool yet again along this east coast. More clouds across central and southern parts of England and Wales through the afternoon, a few showers here. More low cloud burning back to the coast across the northeast of Scotland, but in between, it's fine, it's dry, with some lovely sunshine. Highest temperatures the western side of the country coming in around 17 or 18 degrees Celsius. Now, through this evening and overnight, not a lot of change. This cloud tends to fade away towards more southern areas. More cloud then comes in across Northumberland, Pennine districts, as well as the Midlands, south east Scotland. And that low cloud, that hard, continues to affect the far northeast of Scotland. A mostly dry night, but one or two spits and spots can't be ruled out where that cloud is thick enough, and temperatures holding up because of the wind. So the weekend looks like this. A rather cloudy start for some. Again, a few showers where that cloud slowly develops and becomes thicker. But towards the west, brighter skies, certainly for Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. And we will see the cloud break up through the afternoon, allowing some sunshine. The winds are still very brisk coming in from the east-northeast. Temperatures typically coming in around 17 or 18 further west. Further east, 12 to 14 degrees Celsius. It's a similar situation through Saturday and into Sunday. Again, we're chasing cloud, temperatures just about holding up. And again, that wind will be strong at times. So here's your outlook through the next few days. Sunday's looking mostly fine with some sunshine. Monday more in the way of clouds, but the temperatures will slowly decline as we head through next week. I'll see you later. Bye-bye for now.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, happy Friday everybody. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, and Inaya Falarin-Iman on your TV, radio and online, with you all the way through until midday with a massive show, all of today's top stories and expert guests as well.
Yes, make sure you get in touch with your views as usual, gbviews at gbnews.uk. We get into those throughout the show, but first is the latest news.
Good morning. It's coming up to 1 minute past 11. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. A senior Conservative MP has said there's an absence of discipline, focus and leadership in Number 10. Tobias Elwood made the comments this morning after MPs ordered an investigation into whether the Prime Minister misled Parliament over parties at Downing Street. The probe by the Privileges Committee will begin once police have completed their investigation into COVID rule breaches. Shadow Secretary of State for Northern Ireland Peter Kyle told GB News the Partygate scandals revealed Boris Johnson's true self.
Lost his authority because he couldn't even get his own MPs to support him yesterday. The police have fined him. He has a criminal sanction against him. What this whole Partygate debacle has exposed is Boris Johnson's character flaws. He is reckless, he's untrustworthy, and he lies, and he is incompetent.
Meanwhile, 4,000 miles away, Boris Johnson has announced the UK and India have signed a new defence agreement. The Prime Minister is currently in New Delhi for talks with his Indian counterpart, Narendra Modi. The new deal includes cooperation on fighter jet technology. Mr Johnson said the two leaders had told negotiators working on a post-Brexit trade deal to get it done by Diwali in October.
So today, we've agreed a new and expanded defence and security partnership, a decades-long commitment that will not only forge tighter bonds between us, but support your goal, Narendra, of Make in India. We've agreed to work together to meet new threats across land, sea, air, space and cyber.
A German national linked to the disappearance of Madeleine McCann has been identified as a formal suspect by Portuguese authorities. Officers haven't named the individual. In 2020, German police said they were investigating a man known as Christian B. in connection with the disappearance of the 3-year-old in Praia da Luz in May 2007. The mayor of Mariupol has appealed for a full evacuation of the besieged Ukrainian city. It's after Russia's President Vladimir Putin claimed it's now controlled by his forces. Mayor Vadim Wojchenko says Putin's destroyed around 90% of the port city and that 100,000 people are still waiting for evacuation. Satellite images of Mariupol appear to show mass graves. Russia has yet to respond to the claims.
There are still 100,000 people in this city who for the second day in a row are waiting for evacuation. And they give us just such a tiny number of buses. Like it was yesterday, they said there would be 90 buses, but only 7 arrived.
The World Bank estimates the war in Ukraine has caused $60 billion worth of damage to buildings. David Malpass, the organisation's president, made the comments during a conference in the US. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky also spoke at the conference. He said his country needs $7 billion a month to make up for economic losses.
The funds from the war tax should be used to help Ukraine, to rebuild everything that Russia has destroyed in the war. And if this tax is applied to other aggressors, the funds should be directed to the victims of the war. Every country in the world needs to prepare now for the possible complete severance of relations with Russia. No one should depend on the political whims of the leaders of that country.
In France, Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen are out on their last day of campaigning ahead of the presidential vote on Sunday. Opinion polls show President Macron is about 10 points ahead of the far-right leader, but his re-election isn't a done deal. Surveys are predicting a turnout of roughly 73%, which would be the lowest since 1969. And UK retail sales dropped last month as the rising cost of living starts to hit consumer spending. According to the Office for National Statistics, they fell by an unexpected 1.4% in March. Online sales bore the brunt as people cut down on unnecessary purchases, dropping 7.9%. Fuel sales also fell as people reduced their non-essential travel amid soaring petrol and diesel prices. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now it's back to Patrick and Anaya with To The Point.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Anaya Flower-Iman. I'm Patrick Christie's on your TV, radio and online. We've got a great show lined up to kickstart the final hour, so here's what's on the menu.
Yes, right. Well, the Prime Minister is in India in hopes of unlocking Britain's global potential as the UK and India sign a new defence cooperation agreement and will look to complete a free trade deal by the end of the year.
Yes, and Australia's longest-serving foreign minister will join us in studio to defend the UK's offshore processing plan as the best way to combat people smuggling across the channel. We'll pitch your questions to him, so keep sending them.
Yes, indeed. And finally, Britain's Got Talent star Francine Lewis wants to give you tips on how to prevent being scammed online after she was swindled out of, get this, £90,000 by fake stockbrokers. She will join us later.
Yes, we have all that coming up and much more across the programme, so make sure you get in touch with your views, as usual. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
So, Prime Minister Boris Johnson is in India attempting to build better relationships for British and Indian businesses, already announcing a new commercial deal worth more than £1 billion.
Yes, but back home, his relationship with his own party is under strain, to say the least. Tory MPs allowed for an inquiry into the launch to be launched into whether or not the Prime Minister purposely misled Parliament. Sir Keir Starmer said this shows he has lost the trust of his own MPs as well as that of the public.
Well, Albi Amankona, co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism and GB News regular, friend of the channel, joins us now. Albi, thank you very much. Are you a bit sick of Partygate?
I think everyone's a bit sick of Partygate, Patrick. It's been going on and on and on for really quite some time, but I think the news this week actually just shows that Partygate could be extended well into the autumn. There are now 3 ongoing investigations into Partygate. We're still waiting on the Sue Gray report, of course. We've just had the Privilege Committee the vote be approved for that to kick off after the Met Police investigation concludes. And then, of course, we've got the Met Police investigation, which is still ongoing, with the initial fines handed out to both the Prime Minister and the Chancellor just a couple of days ago.
Albie, I guess one of the things that I've wondered is whether, a lot of people have said, but there's other international things going on. But Boris Johnson hasn't really set the agenda at home. I mean, one of the things that we're facing within the country right now is the cost of living crisis linked to the energy crisis, questions around education, housing and so on. He's not necessarily taken charge of the narrative at home and driven it in a different direction for him to be able to move on from Partygate.
I think it has been very difficult for the Prime Minister to take charge of the narrative away from the scandals of Partygate and the Peppa Pig scandal towards the end of last year and the Patterson scandal, of course, simply because the way that Number 10 has been responding to these events hasn't been all that good. And we had, of course, all of those changes at Number 10 as a result of growing frustrations within the Conservative Party and Conservative MPs, but it doesn't really seem that those changes have led to any meaningful changes in outcomes when it comes to how he's responded to the Partygate issue, as we see the issue just keep rolling on and on and on.
You make of the likes of Steve Baker now coming out and calling for Boris to go?
I think it's very interesting to see both Steve Baker and Mark Harper come out against the Prime Minister this week. I think it's interesting because they're actually both the chair and co-chair of the COVID Recovery Group. And the COVID Recovery Group was, of course, instrumental in making the government U-turn on its plan for the Plan B restrictions that were set to come in last December, and particularly on the vaccine passports. And one has to wonder that if they can stoke the flames of 100 Tory MPs to perhaps put in their letters to the 1922 committee or vote against the Prime Minister in a vote of confidence, could we be seeing the beginning of the end for this Prime Minister?
And just moving on to the Prime Minister in India right now. I mean, what do you make of it? Do you see this as a positive development? Britain developing relationships and building on our relationships with many non-EU partners? Or, as we had an earlier interview, are there political sensitivities there around India? For example, they haven't been as clear as the UK has when it comes to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Is India the kind of country, or Modi the kind of leadership that we want to be getting close to?
I think it's twofold. So on the one hand, you're absolutely right to say that one of the benefits of Brexit was that we'd be able to start building these relationships with old allies from the Commonwealth, like India, for example, which is one of the fastest growing economies in the world, and get better trade deals than the EU or the US could achieve. Neither of those entities actually have trade deals with the US, and we're hoping to close one by Diwali, the Prime Minister says. But then, of course, there's the other problem, which is that Narendra Modi has been relatively neutral on the issue of Ukraine, which is obviously a problem when the UK Prime Minister and our Western allies and partners have taken such a strong position against what's happening with Russia and Ukraine. So I suppose some people would argue that there are ethical issues with engaging with a country like India at this precise moment in time.
Yeah, Albie, look, thank you very, very much. Always an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. We'll be speaking to you again very soon, no doubt. Cheers for that. Albie Amonkona, co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism. Well, whizzing you through a couple of things there. Look, we've got loads of views coming in here on this very issue. This person asked not to be named, so I will not name you. Democracy means not always getting your own way. Basically what they're saying is trying to oust a PM, especially one with such a huge majority, is the beginning of the end for democracy. They're calling for a stop to the faux media outrage, and they tell everyone to grow up. So thank you very much, Anonymous.
Yeah, I mean, I think there has undoubtedly been a media push campaign against Boris Johnson, and this is not just something that's happened, in relation to Partygate. They've kind of seized on this opportunity. There has been a long-standing problem. I mean, let's not forget when all of the people were outside of his advisors' house. What's his name now?
Well, Dominic Cummings.
Dominic Cummings, that's it. Yeah, I think that also demonstrated that there was this aggressive campaign against the government. But, I have spoken to many ordinary people who were genuinely felt betrayed when they made huge sacrifices over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
You know, pregnant women giving birth alone. You know, going to a funeral with not the people that you all wanted to be there. These are really difficult issues. And I think even if it was just about cake, I think for a lot of people it represented an attitude that they completely disagreed with.
I can completely understand that, and I think, look, you know, I'm obviously from up north. I was back there a couple of weeks ago, and I know that there's a lot of mood, there's a lot of feeling on the ground there that from people who liked Boris, voted for Boris, but have decided that this is a bridge too far.
Yeah.
You know, I am obviously not in that camp. I'm not trying to blindly defend him. It's just just for me that the two things are not equitable.
Yeah.
You know, but
yeah, well, I think Dominic Cummings will be mortified that I nearly forgot his name.
Yes, that will probably hurt him more than getting fired, actually. The idea that people might not know who Dominic Cummings is. Yeah, so it's only a matter of time, surely, before Dominic Cummings is on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, or Strictly Come Dancing or something like that, you know? I think that'd be quite funny. But, yeah, look, lots of views obviously coming in, one even on Rwanda. People just saying that the Rwanda deal, this is from John, is a little bit too little too late. We've, well, according to John anyway, already allowed too many people in. That's obviously his view. And, yeah, it's interesting, this one as well. Nick's got in touch about the way that we are discussing Marine Le Pen, whether or not she's far right. Obviously, this is in light of the French elections. We covered that earlier on.
Yeah.
Do you think she's far right?
Yeah, so I think socially, I think she is on the one of the further right on the political mainstream of French politics. She is to the right of Macron, but there are also centre-right parties. Le Crèche, she's one of the people that was centre-right, and there are people that are even further right than that, and I think that Marine Le Pen is one of them. And one of the policies she is arguing for is a ban on women wearing the headscarves in public. Now, that's not the full face veil, that is just the normal headscarf that many Muslim women wear. That would be, you know, politically unpalatable in the UK. So I would argue that she is socially far right, but actually economically she's quite left-wing.
Yeah.
So if you look at some of her economic policies, for example, she wants to take young people under 30s out of income tax. She wants to make sure that there is a strong economic security for people across the country in France. You can make the case that she's actually quite left-wing.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating one, that. But, I can't remember whose name that was that messaged in there. Nick, yes, there you go. So I suppose in some senses she is far right, in some senses she's left-wing, Nick. There you go.
Well, but actually, in many ways, that was similar to what Trump was like. Socially, he was quite right-wing, but then he talked about protectionism, bringing jobs back to American people. These were using a lot of the rhetoric of the left. And actually, Bernie Sanders supporters, many of them voted for Trump.
Really? That's a shift, isn't it? Just on the headscarf thing, quickly. I know we are going to move on in a sec, but it's interesting because I wonder what this means. You know, it's almost like a quintessentially French thing. You know, you can see the women driving around Paris in their open-top cars and the shawl on and the sunglasses. Were you allowed to wear a shawl? Are you allowed to wear... That's
this is what I wonder, because, I mean, for example, within many African communities that are Christian, you know, wrapping your hair is actually just a fashion thing. So would it be particularly just targeting Muslim women, which, you know, is quite discriminatory in my personal view, or is it just, you know, banning a particular fashion style?
Interesting. Well, we never know. We might get to find out if she wins the election, I suppose. But there we are. There she is, Marine Le Pen, driving a massive truck. So, good stuff. Right. OK, we're going to move on now, I believe. Thank you very much for everyone who has been getting in touch. Keep these views coming. But after the break, we've got a national treasure, a national hero, a lady who stole the nation's hearts. Britain's Got Talent contestant Francine Lewis warns us about online fraud after she got swindled herself. That's after the weather.
Hello there. Welcome to your weather update from the Met Office. I'm Claire Nazir. Here are your headlines through the rest of today. Still that nagging easterly wind, a few showers lurking around. Brightest skies will be towards the north. We're stuck between high pressure across Iceland and low pressure lurking across Iberia as well as France. A squeeze on the isobars, meaning we're seeing that easterly wind come in over a cool sea, hence the reason why it's going to feel cool yet again along this east coast. More clouds across central and southern parts of England and Wales through the afternoon. A few showers here. More low cloud burning back to the coast across the northeast of Scotland. But in between, it's fine. It's dry with some lovely sunshine. Highest temperatures the western side of the country coming in around 17 or 18 degrees Celsius. Now, through this evening and overnight, not a lot of change. This cloud tends to fade away towards more southern areas. More cloud then comes in across Northumberland, Pennine districts, as well as the Midlands, southeast Scotland. And that low cloud, that HAR, continues to affect the far northeast of Scotland. A mostly dry night, but one or two spits and spots can't be ruled out where that cloud is thick enough and temperatures holding up because of the wind. So the weekend looks like this. A rather cloudy start for some. Again, a few showers where that cloud slowly develops and becomes thicker. But towards the west, brighter skies, certainly for Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. And we will see the cloud break up through the afternoon, allowing some sunshine. The winds are still very brisk coming in from the east-northeast. Temperatures typically coming in around 17 or 18 further west, further east, 12 to 14 degrees Celsius. It's a similar situation through Saturday and into Sunday. Again, we're chasing cloud, temperatures just about holding up. And again, that wind will be strong at times. So here's your outlook through the next few days. Sunday's looking mostly fine with some sunshine. Monday more in the way of cloud, but the temperatures will slowly decline as we head through next week. I'll see you later. Bye-bye for now.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christys, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Is 11:21. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Anaya Flaren Iman, and Patrick Christys. We're live on your TV, online and radio this morning.
We very much are. Now, Britain's Got Talent star Francine Lewis says that she was scammed out of £90,000 by a phony stocks company.
The mum, who shot to fame for her hilarious impressions of celebs in 2013, was swindled out of her savings after being tricked by the devious brokers.
Well, Francine actually joins us in the studio now. Thank you so much for coming in to talk about this. Just tell us what happened, first and foremost.
Well, so my husband was looking to do some investments. He was
looking to contact some stockbrokers at the time. Now, he doesn't remember whether he was cold called or whether he found these people. I think he was cold called. And they were persistent. And this is something we need to look out for. Scammers will always persist. They will keep going. They'll keep calling you until they seal that deal. So he started off, he put in £500.
Right.
And then every day he could see his interest. He could log in, see his interest. Then he started putting a bit more, and then he was getting very excited. And I remember him saying to me, look, I know you've got, all the money you've saved from doing the work you've done, because I wanted to actually put it into a property. I put half into a cosmetic company and the other half, I was looking to do something with it. And he said, you need to get it, it's doing no good in the bank. It's not getting any interest. You need to do this. You need to do it. It's look what I'm earning. Look what I'm earning every single day. He didn't just convince me, he convinced my father-in-law. At first I was definitely, no, you haven't even met, I said to him, you haven't even met these people. Are you crazy? And he was like, look, I know, I speak to them every day, you can speak to them. And I did, I spoke to them, and I found it really weird that we've never met them, and they were very convincing. Oh, you can come and meet us in Canary Wharf. But because my father-in-law also put in a hell of a lot of money, I just thought...
You get swept up in it, don't you?
He's a clever man. He's looked into it as well. This must be OK. But not only did I put my money, I then drew out all my kids' saving that I've been saving for them since they were babies. And that I can't ever get over, and I'll never, can't swallow that. It's devastating, absolutely. So I'm so happy that I can make people aware of what happened to my family, because it caused a lot of trauma.
So what was the scheme exactly? So they phone up and tell you, put money in there and that we're going to get some great interest.
All this interest, it's doing no good in the bank for you.
And is it an online thing that you put the money in? So what?
Yeah. So you can see, you can log, you have login details, and you can see every day your money, what the interest you're making.
Yeah.
And he was making a lot of interest, so he then convinced me. He convinced my father.
And how long did this go on for?
This went on for a good couple of months before because I was very dubious. I had a gut feeling. Always follow your gut, by the way. And I never thought I was gullible. I never thought I was, this stupid. And I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed to tell anybody this had happened. And I never forget the night my husband broke the news to me. I mean, he just was... It was really difficult for him to tell me, because he knew he'd convinced me to do this, and he knew that I kept saying, I'm not sure, and it took a while. So he felt incredibly guilty for me and my father-in-law. And I remember the next day him collapsing, and...
gosh.
And I had to call an ambulance, and that's when I thought, oh, my God, you know what? Nothing's more important, like his health and us and our family being together. There's nothing more important than, money's money, it comes and goes. But I felt very embarrassed to tell anyone. I really did. And then I felt that I needed to. So I approached a show called Rip Off Britain.
Yes.
They covered our story. And I felt so happy that this was now out. And when it came out, I had so many people message me, this happened to me.
Exactly.
This was the company
Very common.
that And what UK Finance has said is it's not the older generation anymore, it's the young generation. It's between 18 and 35 that the scammers are scamming, basically. And we need to be aware. It doesn't matter if it's your bank, a government department, the police, it doesn't matter, because these people are not always sincere.
No.
So you have to always stop, think, check, I'll call you back.
Yep.
And, check it's that your bank.
Absolutely.
And that's the advice I could give. And I'm so happy to be part of this campaign, the Take 5 to Stop Fraud campaign, because to make people aware, I just want, if I can help one or two people, that'd be amazing.
No, of course, and I'm sure you are. And it's a lesson, really, isn't it, in turning something devastating and bad into a positive, or taking some positives from it, at least. I'll never forget, I was working as a local reporter in Cumbria, and there was an old lady who called me up. She was in her 80s, and someone called her, cold call, and they'd walked her to the bank on the phone and made her move her entire savings from that account. So, it was like 70 grand or something, And she did it, bless her, because, look, she was probably of a certain age, maybe a bit more trusting. But in that case, I believe she was able to get the money back. What's the situation with you, then?
We had no luck. I mean,
No.
I approached my bank. We called Action Fraud, because that's very important.
Of course, yeah.
If anyone gets scammed, to immediately call your bank and Action Fraud. Unfortunately, the funds are moved immediately to foreign bank accounts. And once that happens, there's no way of ever getting it back. And this particular company, Fomax Capital, they closed down very quickly. And this is what the thing was, I even spoke to them and I said, come on, guys, we know this is a scam. We just want our money back and we will, not say a thing. Yeah. And this guy was going, it's not, I swear, you're going to get your money, you're going to get your money. Oh, my God. Honestly, they don't stop.
Did they have any English?
They don't stop. They ruin people's lives.
Scumbags.
And, even a post office delivery note that says, oh, you need to collect your delivery and you have to pay £3.57. Like, if you're not expecting something, don't pay it, Just be really wary. There's so many scams going on all the time. But do you know what's ironic? Stuck with my husband through this whole thing, got through it, and then last night I found out he was cheating on me with his best friend's girlfriend.
Gosh.
So, you know what? I wish I'd gone there and then, because, he put me in that situation, and now he's put me in this situation that my life, I'm devastated.
Are you all right? Yeah, well...
I will be. I'm still in shock and numb. But you know what? I'll get through it. I have to. I've got 2 children.
OK, all right. I mean, that must be...
You are a very strong...
Devastating.
...woman.
Yeah, incredibly strong. And also, hopefully he's watching, eh?
I just feel like such an idiot again.
No, right, stop this. You're not an idiot at all. This kind of thing can happen to anybody at any time. And I tell you what, the bravery and the courage to come on and talk about it and to help others just shows, what kind of it speaks volumes about your character. So thank you very, very much.
Oh, well, it looks like another divorce. What can I say? I love it.
This is the fantastic impression of Katie Price. Just before you revealed the sad news about your husband, I had it in my ear. It was like, do you reckon it's OK if she can do an impression? I was like, I don't think any more it is, no. I don't think I'll just leave it. But there you go, you did it anyway.
You know what, Mrs? Don't let these men get to you. These scammers, me and my Aussie will not let that happen. Because we're fabulous darlings.
Fantastic. Oh, you got to come back on. Absolutely. Good luck with everything.
Yeah,
genuinely, from the bottom of my heart. Francine Lewis there, of course. Goodness me, that was a roller coaster. But on a serious note, if you have been defrauded, just, get in touch. Tell us what your experience of it was like, how they did it, because I think it's important to raise awareness. And something I thought was really important that Francine said there, talking about how, she felt a bit silly or whatever. This is so common. This happens to... And it can happen to anyone. The smartest people out there, the people who are so business savvy, financially savvy, it can happen. No one's immune from this kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Francine, and sending love to you.
Yes.
Well, after the break, Australia's longest-serving Foreign Affairs Minister, Alexander Downer, will answer your questions about offshore processing of migrants. But before that, morning news.
Good morning, it's 11:30. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. A senior Conservative MP has said there's an absence of discipline, focus and leadership in Number 10. Tobias Elwood made the comments this morning after MPs ordered an investigation into whether the Prime Minister misled Parliament over Partygate. The Prime Minister will now face a full parliamentary investigation. 4,000 miles away, Boris Johnson has announced the UK and India have signed a new defence agreement. The Prime Minister's currently in New Delhi for talks with his Indian counterpart Narendra Modi. As part of the new deal, Boris Johnson's pledged to support India's goal of building its own fighter jets. He also said the two leaders have told negotiators working on a post-Brexit trade deal to get it done by Diwali in October. The United Nations says there's growing evidence of war crimes in Ukraine, urging both Moscow and Kiev to respect international law. The organisation said Russian troops have indiscriminately bombed populated areas, killing civilians and wrecking hospitals. Earlier, the mayor of Mariupol appealed for a full evacuation of the besieged Ukrainian city after the Russian president claimed it's now controlled by his forces. Satellite images of it appear to show mass graves. Russia has yet to respond to the claims. The World Bank estimates the war in Ukraine has caused $60 billion worth of damage to buildings. David Malpass, the organisation's president, made the comments during a conference in the US. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky also spoke at the conference. He said his country needs $7 billion a month to make up for economic losses. A German national linked to the disappearance of Madeleine McCann has been identified as a formal suspect by Portuguese authorities. Officers haven't named the individual. In 2020, German police said they were investigating a man known as Christian B. in connection with the disappearance of the 3-year-old in Praia da Luz in May 2007. TV online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. It's back to Patrick and Anaya with To The Point next. Don't go anywhere.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, all. That was a bit of a bombshell, wasn't it? Right, it's 11:35. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys, and Anaya Flowering-Man on GB News, live on your telly, online and radio this morning.
Yes, under the government's new immigration policy, a former RAF site near York will become Britain's first asylum processing reception centre. Hundreds of single male asylum seekers could be placed at the former RAF base within the village of Linton-on-Ouse for up to 180 days at a time, whilst their asylum claims are being processed.
So, those that are rejected for asylum will be sent more than 4,000 miles away on a one-way ticket to Rwanda. And Anna Riley has a story for us on this.
A former RAF base in the sleepy North Yorkshire village of Linton-on-Ouse is set to be the first UK asylum reception centre under new Home Office plans to tackle illegal immigration. The disused 680-acre facility will house up to 1,500 single male asylum seekers who could stay on the site for up to 6 months while their claims are processed, with access to Linton-on-Ouse and the wider area until 10 p.m. each evening. Residents weren't consulted on the plans, and many gathered at a parish council meeting on Thursday evening to voice their concerns.
Well, I'm shocked and surprised. I think people are angry and upset simply because of not being informed, because it's come so totally out of the blue.
I mean, they've got to go somewhere, but a village as small as this, it's just
It's crazy. Currently, we live in a very tight-knit community. Everybody knows everybody. Our children feel safe to roam around. They can go to the park on their own. And that will change, and that makes us feel unsafe.
Fundamentally, it's a good idea. I think we should be supporting people that are coming from difficult situations.
But when you've suddenly got 1,500 adult males from a completely different culture being able to integrate in the village, wander around, uncontrolled, I think it's dangerous.
The sharp increase in illegal boat crossings to Dover means about 37,000 destitute migrants are currently being accommodated in hotels, costing the taxpayer £4.7 million a day. Kevin Hollinrake, local MP for Thurston Moulton, can see how housing migrants at the disused RAF Linton-on-Ouse site will save money and create up to 300 local jobs. But Kevin's opposing the plans as he doesn't believe the area has sufficient amenities to house hundreds.
I just don't think it's the right location. As I said from the Home Office advice, you'd expect this to be in a major conurbation, and then the residents there who are free to come and go can go out and access leisure facilities or park or whatever else it is, doctors and dental surgeries, that kind of thing. Although I understand those things will be provided on the site, but it's bound to be easier to do things to access certain services in a large town or a city rather than a very small village, potentially up to 1,500 people. And that's bigger than the village. That's the camp itself would be bigger than the village at that point in time. So I just don't think it's the right location.
In response to concerns raised, a Home Office spokesman said the reception centre will contribute towards ending the costly use of hotels and help those most in need while returning those without a genuine right to remain in the UK. If the plans go ahead without opposition, the 1,200 residents living in this village could see the first migrants coming to this new, purpose-built asylum reception centre within the coming weeks. Anna Riley, GB News, Linton-on-Ouse.
Yes, thank you very much, Anna, for that package. Right, now, our next guest has recently featured in videos from the Home Office defending the Rwandan migrant deal as the best solution to combat the people smugglers facilitating the Channel migrant crisis.
Yes.
Well, basically, it's a racket which is run by people smugglers to make money, and they make huge amounts of money. But you can only destroy their model by guaranteeing that people cannot get to the UK courtesy of a people smuggler. Otherwise, you can't destroy their model.
Yes, well, there we are.
Yes, Alexander Downer was the Australian Minister for Foreign Affairs from 1996 to 2007 and played a role in negotiating Australia's own offshore migrant processing scheme called the Pacific Solution. He joins us now in the studio. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
I mean, we've got many questions.
Loads.
GB News viewers. So if you don't mind, I'll just
go for it.
give them to you. I mean, first question is, what would you suggest to deal with the French policy or the police standing by whilst watching migrants launch into the Channel? So we see many videos and images of French ships just allowing, just to go ahead.
Yeah, well, there's nothing you can do. You have to negotiate with the French as best you possibly can. And remember, they've been going through an election period where the election is a contest to win a pretty conservative electorate and a very nationalist electorate. So making concessions to the UK in the lead up to the election would have been seen as weakness by Macron. So this is not the time to negotiate with the French. But after the election's out of the way, the British government should look to see whether there are options to negotiate with the French. After all, it's the point I always make about this Channel crossing issue. These people are not in Iraq or Afghanistan or Eritrea. They're in France.
Yeah.
And they are, it doesn't matter what their nationality is, they are not being persecuted in France.
No.
And I don't know why the UK would accept that people who are not being persecuted in France should be able illegally to come to the UK.
Well, exactly. There's no war in France, and if there was, they'd have already surrendered. Hey, sorry, I couldn't get here. Bernard's been in touch. Would it be possible to have a cruise ship docked offshore or in Dover to house, and then when it's full, sail to Rwanda for them to be processed if it works to deter the crossings and good? I mean, the offshore processing, basically the crux of this is, should we have an offshore processing centre so they don't even set foot in the UK?
Yeah, well, Rwanda is a landlocked country, so you can't sail ultimately to Rwanda.
There's a fatal flaw in this plan.
Good point.
But that's not to be clever. I mean, you could sail to Kenya and then you could become ambassador and then you could take them to Rwanda. You could do that, but it's probably easier to house them at Marston, for example, or in this place in Yorkshire. I would have thought, though, the issue here is a slightly different one. You want to get them on the plane to Rwanda as quickly as possible. You want to do that immediately. I mean, in the case of Australia, people don't try to come that way anymore because by a small boat because they're not going to succeed and they know it. We've broken the back of the model. But if they did, and we did intercept a boat, then the people would be on their way to Nauru within hours, not in days, not in weeks, in hours.
And this is what I want to... this actually is just something I always wanted to talk to you about. I went to one asylum seeker hotel the other week, did quite a big investigation into it, actually, a couple of days ago. I went out on it, and what I was amazed by was the lack of security, not just on the way in, right, but also if these asylum seekers now know that they're going to be in a hotel for a little bit, waiting to be essentially deported to Rwanda, they can just go out and about. And I think we're going to see a lot of them absconding, I suppose. There's nothing to stop them. There's still no security, really, at this hotel, for example. So your point there is a vital one, isn't it? As soon as these people arrive, they need to be somewhere secure and then on a plane out.
Straight away.
Straight away.
The longer you leave them in the UK, the more they will delay their departure in any imaginable way. Of course, there is absconding. Another possibility for them is endless legal suits and just tie up the time of the courts.
Exactly.
Which they, are doing in any case. So you've got to realise that the people smugglers educate the people who buy the passage to the UK on how to deal with the system when they arrive, what to say to the Border Force officers. Make sure you, in most cases, throw away your documents so you're undocumented. There's a whole strategy for how to defeat the border. A whole strategy. And the people smugglers are absolute masters of this. We found this in Australia as well. So you have to defeat them and you have to be tough, quick, and a little bit ruthless, because if you don't solve the problem, it'll get bigger and bigger. So last year there were 28,000 people who came across the channel this way. This year the expectation is there'll be between 60 and 70,000. So it is a rapidly growing problem.
Goodness me.
I mean, in terms of Australia, in terms of this policy, many people say it has worked. But, I mean, is there any evidence that refugees are taking other routes? Because Australia is still accepting, refugees. And is there any evidence that maybe they're taking different routes in order to get to Australia?
So you wouldn't know, because there's a legitimate pathway to refugee status in Australia. Australia accepts around 20,000 refugees for resettlement every year.
But some people have argued that's been some of the problem in the UK, where you cannot apply outside of the UK. So you have to get to the UK in order to apply for asylum, and that's why people are taking these dangerous routes. So perhaps, should they replicate Australia in that sense, why having also a legitimate route?
I doubt that they're the same people. I mean, the people who are making the channel crossing, they are people, they are young men. They're men under the age of 30, 35. 80% of them are. 70% of them are single men. If you look at genuine refugee flows, people escaping persecution, they're likely to be families, obviously women and children, as well as men, elderly people, young people. You get a mix, wouldn't you? But in this particular case, you don't, which does lead you to draw certain conclusions about the nature of the racket that's taking place.
Yeah, well, 100%, and it's about time more people started saying that, actually. How long was it between Australia implementing your policy, similar-ish one, I suppose, and you seeing a reduction in the numbers of people trying to get out? How long did it take for the deterrent to kick in?
So I think that it would be fair to say, to start with, it took a few months because the people smugglers thought we weren't serious, or we would cave in, or they could undermine the government's position. Of course, there was a lot of political opposition in Australia to what the government was doing. Then the people smugglers were obviously hoping that the political opposition would break the back of the government's policy. So it took a while. It took a few months. But we did two things. Not only did we send people to a third country, Nauru, and also Papua New Guinea for processing, but we also, in a very few cases, turned back boats. So you can turn back boats when it's safe to do so. You can't when it's not safe to do so. Difficult to do, but it's a strong message to send out to the people smugglers. Look, if somebody pays you, in the case of the UK, they're paying €3,000 to go on...
Just across the channel?
Just to go across the channel.
So goodness knows how much it's costing them to begin with, by the way.
Yeah, they've had to get... of course, they've come from wherever they've come from.
I couldn't afford to be an economic migrant.
They typically come from Iran, typically, but not universally. They come from Iran and Iraq. So they've got to get from there. And they've got to get through France. Sometimes they come through Germany and Belgium down into France, but anyway, they've got to get to France, got to get to the coast. And then they pay €3,000 unless you're steering the boat. And you
what do you get?
You get a
free?
Discount. No, not free. I think it's £1,500 if you steer the boat.
Half price if you drive the boat.
But isn't that a loan for a lot of those people? You know, that it's a loan that they take out against the people smugglers. So oftentimes that, you know, they are indebted to them in quite a...
Yeah, I mean, well, you can assume that. I guess it would vary. But there are people who have access to money. So if you're a genuine refugee in a refugee camp in eastern Turkey, you know, near the Syrian border...
Yes, I've been to that. I've been to that.
Yeah, but you're not likely very easily to be able to assemble that much money in quick time to get to the UK. But so these people usually have access to funds. I mean, if you're going to borrow money from the people smugglers or owe a debt to the people smugglers, then you're going to have to get a job in the UK and then pay them back. So they get the money, don't you worry. For the people smugglers, this is a multi-billion-pound industry.
Fantastic. Well, look, I must say, Alexander, that was riveting stuff. You have to come back, OK? It'd be great to have you back on the show, Alexander Downer there. Of course, so just whizzing us through, essentially, well, answering your questions, really, about the new Rwanda scheme in relation, of course, to what Australia did, because he was the Australian Minister for Foreign Affairs from 1996 to 2007. It's a heck of a long time, that.
And nearly 12 years. Yeah.
Impressive.
11 3/4 years.
Clung on in there. Fantastic, good stuff. All right. Well,
survived.
Survived. Oh, that's a better turn of phrase. You're right. Yes, absolutely. Anyway, right, we're moving on.
Yes, well, as you know, on Wednesdays we have our viewer-led show where you select the topics you want us to cover. One of the topics we didn't quite have the time for was from Dave, who asked us to talk about net zero, saying, quote, "The most important issue, our modern civilization, is the available of plentiful cheap energy, but we are now embarked on the wrong course."
Well, Education Secretary Nadhim Zahawi announced plans for the UK's education sector to become a world leader in climate change, which included a new GCSE in natural history. I'd rather have one in unnatural history.
Well, joining us now to discuss the usefulness of net zero on this Earth Day, Bob Ward, Policy and Communications Director at the Grantham Research Institute on Climate Change and the Environment, and Harry Wilkinson, who is Head of Policy at Net Zero Watch. I mean, thank you both for joining us this morning. I mean, firstly, I'll start with you, Harry. I mean, why do you oppose net zero, or at least what's your thoughts on net zero? Because climate change activists and so on who are protesting will argue that, for example, we need to decarbonise as soon as possible in order to save the planet. What's wrong with that?
Well, I think decarbonisation as an objective isn't a bad objective in itself, but I think this is a matter of priorities. People are really struggling now to pay their energy bills, and in poorer countries, people are in extreme poverty because their countries haven't industrialised, and those countries need to see lots more fossil fuels usage if those countries are going to develop. So I think your viewer, Dave, who messaged in, was very insightful. The world does need a lot more cheap, plentiful energy. And when Net Zero Watch polled the British public, 50% of them roughly said that affordability should be the main concern for government energy policy, compared to only about 16% who said net zero. So it's clear the public want the government to focus on getting bills down rather than net zero. And we would like to see the government sort of take that on board and actually put all of its energies into getting the price of energy down.
All right, well, look, Bob, I'd just like to wish you first and foremost a very happy Earth Day, and I think we can all share that sentiment. But is net zero just a harebrained, ill-thought-through policy? It strikes me, anyway, that they've made these massive, bold... Like when you're desperately trying for your missus not to leave you, and you lob out a promise that, you've got no chance of keeping, right? We're going to decarbonise, we're going to go net zero. Well, we can't afford to. We've got a cost of living crisis, and we haven't invented the technology to catch up with it yet, have we? Does it make sense that we're doing this?
Yeah, if you want to stop climate change, you've got to get to net zero emissions. So unless you want climate change to carry on and it gets worse, it causes lots of damage and to lives and livelihoods here and across the world, then you've got to get to net zero. So 2050 has been chosen because it would limit climate change or warming to 1.5 degrees, which scientists have said beyond that, you start getting impacts that become difficult to deal with. But the main thing about net zero is it's driving us in the direction we need to go to get off expensive fossil fuels, which we know are driving the problems we're experiencing at the moment. If we want cheap, plentiful energy, fossil fuels we're seeing now is not the solution. Our prices of filling up the tanks of our cars has gone up because petrol is expensive, and our electricity bills have gone up and our gas bills have gone up because natural gas is expensive and we have to import
it would be much more expensive if we were relying on wind and solar during
That's not true. That's completely
during
not
the energy
true.
crisis,
It's
yes,
not
because it doesn't
true.
meet our energy needs. Obviously, with many Western
not
countries.
True. If you look at a bill, it's not true.
If Western countries could rely on wind and solar right now, when they have committed to massive green targets, I guarantee right now they would be doing that. But it does not meet the energy needs.
It's true that if we'd been going more quickly towards wind and solar, we'd be better off now. The fact that we've been slow is one of the reasons why we're paying so much. Look, the bill has gone up. An average dual fuel bill is now just under £2,000. Right. More than half of that is the wholesale price of natural gas.
What do you think? Do you think that wind and solar provide cheap, plentiful energy right now? We could switch to that right now?
No, not at all. The bill for renewable energy subsidies is around £11 billion a year, and these costs have been rising steadily. What Bob is ignoring is actually the wider costs associated with renewables in terms of managing the intermittent supply, because those mean that we have to do many grid reinforcements, we have to pay for backup energy, and we even need to pay wind turbines to switch off when there's too much wind. The reality is that we haven't fixed the storage problem. We don't know how to store large quantities of energy. And so wind and solar aren't a solution because of the physical reality that they cannot meet our energy needs when we need to meet them. So, and I think what Bob is saying about cheap and plentiful energy, yes, we want to see cheaper energy, but an approach in which the government picks winners when it doesn't necessarily know which technologies will be cheap in the future is bound to lead to higher costs.
So, sorry to interrupt you both on Earth Day.
Just quick,
40 seconds left on the show.
Just quick question to Bob. Do you support nuclear?
Yeah, I think nuclear has a role to play as well.
You've won her over. You've won her back round. Well done, Bob. A strong finish from Bob. Right, thank you very much.
Anything that gets us off fossil fuels.
OK, all right. Look, both of you, thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming on. Bob Ward there, of course, Policy and Communications Director at Grantham Research Institute on climate change and the environment, and Harry Wilkinson, who is Head of Policy at Net Zero Watch. Right, that's it from us today.
Yes.
Don't miss the next show, though, The Briefing with Tom Harwood. I'll be back this evening, 7 until 9 p.m. with Friday Night Feast. Don't miss it. I've got an action-packed show for you.
And the discussion, 3 to 4 p.m. on Sunday.
Absolutely. Have a great weekend, apart from the fact that you'll obviously be watching me later, so I'll see you there.
Hello there, welcome to your weather update from the Met Office. I'm Claire Nazir. Here are your headlines through the rest of today. Still that nagging easterly wind, a few showers lurking around. Brighter skies will be towards the north. We're stuck between high pressure across Iceland and low pressure lurking across Iberia as well as France. A squeeze on the isobars, meaning we're seeing that easterly wind come in over a cool sea, hence the reason why it's going to feel cool yet again along this east coast. More clouds across central and southern parts of England and Wales through the afternoon, a few showers here. More low cloud burning back to the coast across the northeast of Scotland, but in between, it's fine, it's dry, with some lovely sunshine. Highest temperatures the western side of the country coming in around 17 or 18 degrees Celsius. Now through this evening and overnight, not a lot of change. This cloud tends to fade away towards more southern areas. More cloud then comes in across Northumberland, Pennine districts, as well as the Midlands, south east Scotland. And that low cloud, that HAR, continues to affect the far northeast of Scotland. A mostly dry night, but one or two spits and spots can't be ruled out where that cloud is thick enough, and temperatures holding up because of the wind. So the weekend looks like this. A rather cloudy start for some. Again, a few